Hey, everybody, welcome to the Curt Schilling Baseball Show, show number 26. Lots to get to, lots to talk about, and we'll get right to it. One of the things, for those of you that have listened since the show started, I said repeatedly in spring training, I said repeatedly through April and early May that the guys that are stars, the teams that are good, they'll end up where they're supposed to be. Whether it be an incredibly hot Tampa Bay, or a struggling St. Louis, the good teams will figure it out because they're good they have good managers and all things go with that. With one exception, that's happening. Starting in LA or St. Louis, Cardinals have won 11-14 as of taping, out of the basement in the NL Central. And they hit 7 home runs, beat LA 16-8 in game 1 of the series. And took 3 or 4 from the Dodgers and now 5 back at the Brewers. The Cardinals are going to be fine. The question becomes how this unbalanced schedule is going to impact the playoff races as far, because I really honestly believe the AL East is going to have 5 teams over 500. I think everybody, with this unbalanced schedule, I think you're going to see the have-nots really struggling.
And Curt, I saw today the run differential in the American League East. Everybody's positive.
Yeah, and that's
all
not
5.
Yeah, and we're mid to late May now, so numbers are starting to. If you're a hitter that has struggled through a 190 April, we're getting about the time when it's irreparable. If you're a team that's 10 games out, you're probably out. And if you're a hitter that's hitting 200 and you're usually a 290 career hitter, you're going to have a monster rest of the year to hit 275. So it's kind of a cutoff line of a sense. I think, June 1st for me is usually, hey, it is what it is, and they are who they are. And there are a couple teams who, and I've said it, Bill, since day one, the O's went into Toronto and dominated Toronto and improved their road record to 16-8. They have 18 come from behind wins, which is kind of ridiculous in a month and a half. They're at the top third of Major League Baseball in pitching, hitting. They don't lead in any, which is not a problem. Their run differential is plus 41, which is 6th. They start a 3-game series in New York versus the Yankees. They're real. This is a real team. I think Adley Rutschman might be the best player in baseball all around. When you can consider and include offense, defense, and off the field stuff, I think if you're starting a franchise, he'd be one of the 2 or 3 guys whose name you would probably start with. And it's real. Like I said, I think he's Joe Mauer with a little more power. And Joe Mauer is a borderline Hall of Fame player. I just want to see the kid stay healthy because he's a special talent. And they have young talent in the big leagues, a lot of young players, but those comeback wins and those come from behind wins are things that fuel a young team and get them into a place where they're never out, bottom of the 8th, down 3. The game's not over for them. Whereas they're, other teams are like, okay, this is a situation where, let's go get them tomorrow. They don't have that. And I think a lot of that has to do with what's going on the field, but I think off the field as well. And you know what? On a personal note, I am happy as hell for the people of Baltimore. This is a fan base that deserves a winner. They've been butchered by a horrific ownership for too long. Hasn't really changed, but their scouting department, the baseball department, has overcome their ownership deficiencies to make this a very, very good team. And I think that as long as they can stay healthy, they could be somebody. In talking about that, and obviously, managerially they're being well run. Something happened in Toronto on Saturday against the Orioles that it's not a big deal in the overall sense, but it is a kind of a snapshot into good and bad managers. And I don't mean bad in the sense that you can't manage a game, but something happened Saturday that would never happen to a Buck Showalter, would never happen to a Terry Francona or a Bob Melvin. John Schneider went out to do a mound visit in the 6th inning with Alex Manoah, and unbeknownst to him, which I'm not sure how, but unbeknownst to him, it was the second visit, which by the new rules, necessitated a pitching change. Dan Isogna approached the mound to relay the fact that this was Toronto's second mound visit of the inning. Major League Baseball prohibits managers from visiting the mound twice. The second mound visit requires a pitching change. They were forced to remove him from the game, which was tied 2-2. Obviously, Manoah was frustrated, but that's inexcusable. Like I said, you won't see a good manager ever do something like that. Number one, because great managers usually have great bench coaches who are situationally aware and who are there for just those sort of things. But, fast forward to September and you're a game out or you end up a game back of the playoffs. Think about that.
Well, imagine if Manoah was having an even better start than he was having. 5 2/3 in, he'd only thrown 84 pitches. He'd given up a couple runs and
more
six
importantly,
hits,
right. More importantly, you have to bring a reliever out of the bullpen who wasn't up getting loose.
Right.
So and he only had 85 pitches. He was throwing a good game, but that's all beside the most important point of that is that can never happen as a big league manager. I can get, as a first-time manager in the minor leagues, yeah, I understand certain things. Those are the kind of things you learn in the minor leagues. You can't learn those things in the big leagues, though. The Mets, who have had a little bit of a resurgence, not a coincidence that it's probably coinciding with Scherzer and Verlander coming back. They had a doubleheader, swept the Guardians. 5 straight wins, all coming from behind. Those things that's energy. That's pure energy. Scherzer went 6 innings of 3-hit shutout ball in game 1. Mets won 5-4. Verlander gave up a run in the first, went 8, and they won 2-1 in the second game. It was the first time a Mets pitcher's gone 8 innings this year. We're in late May. But the Mets are 25-23 now, and they're 5 games back. So Met fans are stepping back from the ledge, as they should. And again, the teams I think that we all thought would be good are good, with one exception. And I'll get to them real quick. Marlins beat the Giants 1-0. And here's the amazing stat. They're 24-22, but they are 15-2 in one-run games with a minus 54 run differential. That tells me that they have a monstrously talented bullpen, and probably a rotation that is getting its butt handed to it more often than it needs to be. Kind of a side note for you Giant fans, Logan Webb came out of the game. It was his first no decision of the year. He threw 7 innings in his last 3 starts prior to this, 4 of his past 5, but he came out after 91 pitches with discomfort in his side. The pain lingered into Saturday, and manager Gabe Kapler said he might need to skip a start. So do with that what you will. Jose Altuve's back, and the Astros won 10-11, which again, we knew they'd be good. And they're going to again come back. 27-19, 2 games back of the Rangers, by the way, the Rangers. And they are who they are. The one outlier in all the teams we thought, and I wouldn't have seen this coming, mainly because of the next conversation, which we're going to have, is about managers. The Padres are 3-11 in their last 14. Tatis is back. Soto's hitting. Machado just went on the DL with a fractured hand. They're 21-26, 7.5 games back. And I would tell you, it would probably be a time to start being concerned if you're a Padres fan. I'm sure if maybe we'll delve into this on Friday's show, but you're going to find some core reasons why they are what they are and who they are with regards to starting pitching, their bullpen, and their offense and lineup, and hitting with runners in scoring position, defensive runs saved, and things like that. So yeah, it's time to worry. Quick, we talked baseball, and this is baseball with a little politics involved. The Dodgers the other day were having a Pride Night, LA of all places, by the way. Imagine that. And apparently they disinvited a group of people that incensed the LGBTQ plus plus. What is the plus again, Bill?
I'm the wrong person to ask.
Okay. Yeah, I am too, because I don't know what the plus stands for. Anyway, the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, a charity that raises money for LGBT causes. I'm not sure what the causes are. They perform in drag dressed as nuns. They were initially set to receive a Community Hero Award only in LA. Only in LA. And they were disinvited. And apparently, a large, and I'm going to use air quotes, a large group of members of that community were incensed and mad. So my guess would be anywhere from 6 to 9 people decided not to attend, because I'm pretty sure that the LGBTQ plus community isn't a significant chunk of the fan base in Major League Baseball, since sports represents everything a lot of them hate. But a conservative Catholic advocacy group, Catholic Vote, was among the fiercest critics of this group. They talked about it. So it's the left being played in their own game, and they hate it. Think of all the protests and standoffs that they have with a Ben Shapiro or Clay Travis or somebody speaking who they disagree with. They protest, they get violent, and they do things that are illegal. This is a group of people protesting the LGBTQ group, and the Dodgers, being a privately owned business, can do whatever they want, and they disinvited them. And there was a group of 8 to 10 people that were really pissed. So
my question to you, Curt, is, does this affect the players at all?
No.
Zero, right?
None. Zero. Many of them maybe never even knew about it, except for the fact, I know for a fact, everybody in the LA media was asking the players about this controversy. This was just like when, was it the Tampa, oh my gosh, the NHL team that, was it Ottawa that had the Pride jerseys? And the Tampa Bay Rays had the Pride jerseys, and like 3 players didn't do it. And the whole story wasn't about the Pride night. It was about the 3 players that didn't wear the jersey. The media being insanely left-leaning and hardcore progressive will focus the topic, whether it is the focus of the outrage or not, on something that's irrelevant and people don't care about. So there's that. Top 5 managers I ever played for. So I went into this list and I wrote down, and I ended up with like 12 or 15 names. And what it came down to be is I'm going to give you my top 5 managers. And for the most part, I'll comment on each one of them and why they're on the list. But then this grew into a bigger list, and a list that I just felt like I had to include. And that is coaches and potential managers that I played for all the way through, who were hugely influential in my career. So you can imagine my top 5 managers start with Frank Kona and Buck Showalter. I think Tito was the best player manager I've ever been around. People manager, best clubhouse guy, just best all around. Most repulsively disgusting sense of humor of any manager I ever had. And just one quick story. This was Tito's sense of humor. In Boston, Tito had a small office, and he had his bathroom on the right side of his office with a door. Tito would call a player in for a meeting while he was in the bathroom, sitting on the pooper with the door wide open, naked. And you would walk into his office. He'd go, "Yeah, come here a minute." And it would be like, "No, I'm not coming there. I'm going to stand right here, and you're going to talk to me from there because you're sick." And that was just his sense of humor. And told some of the greatest Michael Jordan stories of all time. Buck Showalter, the best, hands down, in-game manager at any level I ever played with, played against, played around, any coach, anything. Buck Showalter manages a game better than any manager I've ever been. I would always say, if you're a fan of a Buck Showalter managed team, your team will always have the right hitter at the plate and the right pitcher on the mound in the right situation. Whether the players execute or not, that's a different story. But by far, best game manager I ever played with, and came a long way from the rumors and innuendo early in his career to where he is now. And hats off to him. I think the guy was part of building 2 world championship clubs, and then was fired before they became those clubs in New York and Arizona. But phenomenal manager. Frank Robinson was the first manager I played for in the big leagues. And I'll say this. I don't think, and this is all personal, Frank wasn't a very good in-game manager. And come to find out, much like Pete Rose, it was for this reason. Hall of Fame caliber players found it very hard to understand why everyday players couldn't do the simple things. And for example, if there's a run on first base and you want the hitter to hit to the right side, Frank would be like, just hit the ball to the right side. And people would be like, well, it's not actually that easy. He's like, no, it is. Just hit the ball to the right side. Like, he couldn't understand why players couldn't execute fundamental things that were just run of the mill to him. But for me, he was a career changer. He was so good to me off the field. Discussions that we had, he didn't let me slide. And a time in my life when I had just lost my father, he was an enormously influential person in my life. Oh, we stayed very close friends for a long time. Now, the fourth guy.
Wait, before you go on, Curt, you told me on one of these shows that you have a number of great Frank Robinson stories.
Yes.
I need one right here.
Okay. So in I want to say it was 88. I got called up. This was the year the Orioles were 0-21 to start the season. That was the year I got traded and came to the big leagues. In 1989, it had to be 89, I think. Anyway, Mickey Tettleton's having a career year. And he's having a monster season. It's mid to late in the year. And Phil Bradley had just come off the disabled list. And now you have to understand this dynamic. When Frank would make a change, he would basically lean over. So if Frank's sitting here and the bench is that way, Frank would lean over from his seat and point down to the bench. And players would then begin to play a game of me. Like, he wouldn't say anybody. He wouldn't say anything. He'd just point. And everybody would be like, what? And they'd be looking at themselves. And so he'd wait till the right guy pointed. He'd go, yeah, he'd point him like you. And so Phil comes off the disabled list that night. And Frank points at him, and Phil had wanted Frank to go pinch run at first base. And Phil went up and pinch hit for Mickey Tettleton with the bases loaded. So Frank doesn't understand it until it's announced. And then he's flipping out. And it's like, oh my God, what happened? And so sure enough, Phil hits a grand slam. And after the game, Frank says to the media, well, I wanted to get him into a bat that meant something in a pressure situation. And everybody's like, wait, what? That's not what happened. Like, it was one of those, and that was Frank in a nutshell. They used to have in the bullpen, they used to have a pool, and it was over under, and it was the inning, because Frank was an older guy when he was managing. And the over-under was, and they used to take glasses to the bullpen, field glasses, binoculars. And the over-under was what inning they'd catch Frank falling asleep first. And because he would nod off every now and then during the game. But a great man. Great man. Number 4 on the list is a guy who I feel like, he's a great manager now, and he wasn't actually a manager when I played, but he was. Bob Melvin was the bench coach in Arizona in 2001, and I think he was probably one of the most pivotal and instrumental people from a coaching perspective on why that team won. You could see it in everything he did, everything he said, his whole action. And Bob Melvin, by the way, was one of my catchers when I first came to the big leagues in 1988, 89. Just a tremendous. He had manager written all over him, and it was obvious then. And then the 5th one is a guy probably many of you never heard of. His name's Dick Berardino. Dick was a manager of mine in Greensboro, North Carolina, in low A ball, and a lifer. To this day, I actually talked to him a couple of weeks ago. We stay in touch. He was a hugely instrumental and pivotal person in my life. At a time in my life when I needed my ass kicked a little bit. And we stay friends to this day, and have stayed friends. And I will always remember what he did for me. And I have a list of guys here, and I'll go down this list. These are in no order. These are some of the best coaches I ever played for. and I think I mentioned him last show. Brian Butterfield in Arizona was one of my favorite human beings of all time. He of the naked three-point stance with the Michigan football helmet. John Vukovich in Philadelphia was probably the closest thing I had to a father when I played, and an enormously influential and instrumental guy in my career. Johnny Padres turned my career around in a 20-minute bullpen session, and nothing was ever the same after that. And he was the foundation of my big league career.
What did he do to turn your career around?
He was just himself. He had a way about himself. I threw a 20-minute bullpen, my first bullpen after being traded, in the rain, in Miami, in the old or in Washington, I'm sorry, in the old stadium there. I came to the team the next day. I threw a bullpen. He went down there with me, and 20 minutes later, I walked off the mound knowing that I could be really, really good. And it was a 20-minute confidence session that I've never, ever experienced. And
that's awesome.
It was unbelievable. It was, I went down there, Curt Schilling, the traded guy for Jason Grimsley, and came back out of that bullpen as a future #1 starter mentally. And it was all due to his mouth and comments for 20 minutes. Bill Limoncelli was my first professional manager in rookie ball at Elmira. He was, without a doubt, one of the most influential in my young career, because he was my introduction to baseball. He was very much like my first two managers were short Italian guys, and I think that was on purpose. I think the Red Sox had that set up that way. Larry Boa, the most pissed off, red ass, negative human being I've ever been around, but a winner. Period. Just a winner, and couldn't understand and accept anybody that wasn't a winner. Glenn Sherlock was a bullpen coach in Arizona who became a coach, a bench coach, phenomenal human being, great guy, very influential for me as well. Johnny Oates was in 1990 was a coach in Baltimore, and had manager written all over him. Unfortunately, died way too young of brain cancer, but a phenomenally influential guy. Bob Cluck, my pitching coach in Houston, great guy. I remember I got sent down after in May when I was in 1991 after I'd been traded, and I was in AAA, and I was having a great time in AAA pitching wise, and I was pissed. And I called Bob. I'll never forget this. On the payphone. And I said, you know what? Tell them to just trade me or release me. This is ridiculous. And I had no business making this phone call. But he said, let me tell you something, Shell. He said, a broken bat single in the big leagues is a horseshit pitch. A line drive out is a great pitch. And in that, I never forgot that quote, because it was true. It was all about results. And he was someone who kind of got me righted in a time and a place when I really needed it. And the last one, and not the least, there's other guys I've forgotten, I'm sure. Galen Cisco was my pitching coach, was a pitching coach for me in Philadelphia. He was a phenomenal, he was a two-way All-American football player at Ohio State. And he was the blocking fullback for who, Bill?
Hopalong Cassidy.
Hopalong Cassidy. He was the captain of the Ohio State football team. He was and you would have never guessed any of this if you knew Galen. Galen was a very quiet, reserved guy who I think probably could snap your head off at the joint without any effort. Great guy, super guy. Really, was kind of in a tough place because I was a veteran when he came there, and I think he was a younger coach from a time perspective, but he was also just a really good guy and a guy who helped me along. By no means an all-encompassing list, but those are some of the men that I got to be around and be in. All of them were major influences in my life, and there were many more. So, Billy, we'll be back on Friday, and we will do another top 5 list. You guys keep the other list I had here was 5 best starts in my career. I got so many different things and so many topics. We're going to do a ton of those.
And keep sending them to us, please.
Yes, please. If you want a top 5 list, just ask. I'm not going to do a top 5 worst of anything because I'm not going to talk disparagingly. I had one bad teammate in 22 years. So I'm not going to do any stupid lists like that. This is going to be fun and meant to prop people up. So we will be out we'll see you guys on Friday. OutKick.com. Check out shows on OutKick.com. You can find the Curt Schilling Baseball Show and Spotify. We're on Spotify as well. So you guys have a great week. Billy, talk to you on Friday, my friend.